Hi, good evening everybody. Lovely to see you. Thanks for coming. Irrespective of what the BPC's economics editor Robert Preston may think, we've come together tonight to celebrate good PR. If he chooses to look at BuzzFeed, then that's his bloody problem. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. Good. Right, well, react. However, he is right to flag up one possible harmful effect on more serious journalism. But that doesn't mean that there is not good, constructive and well-researched stories coming out from PR people. Perhaps the PR professional working in the built environment is leading the way. I think in many ways we are. So some thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank the judges, many of them editors and journalists. I'd like to thank the category sponsors, which is coming up right now. Without them, we couldn't allow drinking to go on until you've drunk as much as you like. They are the CIPR Construction Property Group, the Building Centre, and Thomas and Trotman, who do all the graphics, mainly for our journalism awards, but very much back us up this evening. My thanks to them, and also our main partner, our associate partner, DW Publicity Media Suite. They have a range of products that help us communicate with our target audiences and the press. There's some representatives in the room. Do feel free to talk to them if you have some interesting projects that you want to get out to an audience. They're all sitting along there, look. There you are. Good. Welcome. Hurry up. Oh, right. All right. So, I'd like to introduce Clare. Most of you know Clare Barrett. She has been heading up the IBP Futures Group for the last 4 or 5 years. She's gone from Property Week, The Economist, Investors Chronicle, and to the FT as Deputy News Editor, and she now has a brand new job, which she's going to tell us all about. Big hand for Clare Barrett.
So much for coming, and sorry that you have to listen to me whinge on for 10 minutes before you found out who's won an award or not. But Gerald's asked me to come and talk to you tonight about the great D word that is stalking Fleet Street. And that word is digital, and I think we'll all agree that the digital challenge, the new digital economy, however you want to phrase it, is something that is making lots of newspaper and magazine bosses scratch their heads very hard. Look at the New York Times digital report, which was leaked recently and showed how they're really struggling to get to grips with everything, but also for PRs in a digital world when people want different content, they want to see a video rather than necessarily read a story. There are lots of challenges for us all. So Gerald thought it would be a really good idea if I came along to tell you about how I've just changed jobs on the FT, and now I work for ft.com, which is their website. I started on Monday. My hours of work are 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. That's the best bit. And of course, I've done all the necessary things to become a digital journalist, including buying a Brompton bicycle. If you see me looking nervously over there, it's because I've hidden it under that table. So I set off for work on my bicycle. I get to the FT, slightly sweaty, and then basically at 7 o'clock, I don't know what I'm going to write about, because I'm there to service the reader, because we have more readers who look at our website at 7 a.m. than any other time. If you saw a graph of it, it would look like a big heartbeat. And it's basically people getting out of bed, and I know this because we had 4 readers in on a panel last week, and we said, well, how do you read the FT? And they said, well, we wake up, the alarm goes off at 6:30, we pick up our iPhone and we click on your app, and we're actually in bed while we're reading your stories, which I thought, well, that's a bit sad. But I think of things I'd rather do at 6:30 in the morning, lying in bed. But nevertheless, they consider it vitally important to prepare themselves for their day ahead at work by reading about what's going on in the markets, what's going on in the wider world, because we're a global publication. What's happening, in Iraq, Egypt, Jordan. So I've had to write stories about all of those things this week, which I've never done before. Today I had to write about necrophilia, which is a first. So, that was Mr. Saville, very tragic story, but nevertheless, these are things that break during the middle of the day. As soon as they happen, people want to read about them, and stories have a half-life. When something's come out, like a World Cup, the Suarez story today, I didn't have to write that one, thank God, because I know nothing about football. I knew who he was, though. There's only a finite period where people will want to click on a story, and when people know about it, and they won't. So why have I moved to this terrible job where I don't know what I'm doing until I get in the morning and can be doing anything from like Dixon's results to Abu Qatada being exonerated? Well, the reason is, I'm going to read off the sheet now. The FT is just heading in a digital direction, and I thought I've really loved working on the print product. There's many people in this room who are print journalists who I've grown up with in the industry, but there is this kind of misty-eyed vision attached to websites. It's like people who can do Excel. Can anyone in here work Excel? And people go to you, wow, how do you do that? Because it is really impressive, and doing things online is not all that different to doing the journalism that we're used to doing. It just involves a bit of kind of software engineering and a bit of inserting videos and enriching content and thinking about different ways of telling a story. But if you look at the facts, our digital subscribers, so this is people who only read us online, they don't buy the newspaper, increased 32% this year, and they're now 435,000 people are reading us online only, which is 2/3 of our paid readership. So journalists traditionally used to whinge if you said their story wasn't going in the paper, it was going online, and now if they whinge about that and I say, well, 2/3 of people will read it, whereas before only 1/3 would. But the biggest driver of that is mobile, and I'm sure we can all agree. I mean, how much do we all use our mobile phones to get the news? It's just the way that things are going. 50% of our page views are read on mobiles, they told us this week in a presentation, which I was frankly gobsmacked about, but that's how it works. So the challenge really for me was summed up at a school this week. This is the second talk I've done. I went to a school in Plumstead and spoke to a room of 120 17-year-olds who were just about to do their final A-level exams, and many of them wanted to be journalists. I have to say they were a much more challenging crowd than there is in tonight, and I got heckled and called posh and miss. And one girl asked, she said, I don't want to be horrible or anything, or I don't want to offend you, but like news is news. Why would people pay £200 a year to get the FT? And I said, well, because we write about really, really boring things that other newspapers don't. So the only way you can get to read it is if you pay. But what they told me was that they got all of their news online. I said, where do you get news from? None of them really listen to the radio. They might watch TV, they might watch Daybreak, but they had the BBC app on their phone. They liked that. They had BuzzFeed, which Gerald mentioned, which actually does have some interesting content, although most of it is about cats. And the only time that they ever got anywhere near a newspaper was if it was given away to them free at a railway station, which I have to say, and they didn't pay for any of the web access that they had either. So there is this expectation amongst the young that web has to be free, which is the big challenge for us. How do we make people pay for it? Well, we all have ideas and answers for that. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how the FT is working to solve these challenges. So analytics, for me, are one of the really staggering things about moving to this job. I mean, we can lay this program over our website and we can see how many stories are being read by how many people, like in real time. it comes up with a number. And if the numbers aren't very good, then it's like a traffic light system, and it shows you that the story's doing really badly, and then you have to kind of like move the stories around and find the ones that are getting more traffic and put them up. But it's just endlessly fascinating to look at these kind of like dashboards of what people like reading and what they're doing. I mean, the story about Prince Charles today, that was like really, really popular, and we kind of thought that FT readers probably weren't all that into the royals, but it turns out they are. And then you look at where they are, and it's all the bloody ones in America. So lots of revelations. But then when the reporters see how many more people will read a story if they file it at 2 o'clock compared to if they file it at 7 o'clock, which has always been the model to go right up to the deadline. I mean, it can be 5 times as many clicks on that article if it appears at a pertinent time, and they try and they get it. So we now have this analytical tool called Betsy, which is named after our head of analytics. He's called Tom Betts, very smart man. So that's occupying a lot of my time looking at that. But then the Telegraph, you know, they have massive screens in their newsroom showing exactly what stories people are clicking on. So it's much more competitive between their reporters because it's advertised whose story's doing better. My one's doing better than yours. The Mail Online will put different headlines on different stories and try and see with different groups of people which story will get the most clicks, and then they'll change the headline to the most popular one on all of those stories. And whatever you think about the Daily Mail, if you haven't had a look at their online phone app, I kind of recommend and don't recommend that you get it. I recommend that you get it because it's really, really interesting the way that they do it, and their software is faultless. But then I don't recommend that you get it because you'll end up with bloodshot eyes like I did from staying up all night reading about the Kardashians. So the way that we think about a successful story on the web has also changed quite recently. So at the FT at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we do afternoon conference where everyone sits around this kind of big boardroom table and essentially says what's going to be on the front pages all around the world for the next day. And there's a bit of, you know, swagger involved in how you talk up your story. And they have a little list that gets read out of what the top 10 stories are online, and this is measured in terms of clicks. And so it always used to be fairly predictable that whatever was on the front page yesterday would be the top clicked story, or as in the case today, Prince Charles. But now, what gets the kudos isn't the clicks, it's the articles that generate paid subscriptions, because they can tell exactly who you are on our website reading our stories. It's all very clever. If you want to read 5 articles for free a week, you have to give your email address, you have to tell us what your job title is, you have to tell us your salary. This is all information that obviously has a value to advertisers, even though it's anonymised. And the more we learn about you and your history on the site and the stories that you click on, the more of a picture we start to build up that you like reading stories about property. And then we can give you more of what you want by saying, okay, well, if they like stories about property, they'll probably like the story about the bullring just being sold. So we might you know, alert them to that, or the metadata and the algorithms that are used might pull up stuff that Eddie Heathcote has written about architecture. And the story, increasingly in the future, will start to find you as you develop a digital relationship with the different brands that you follow. And also, the longer that you spend on our website, we call this sticky content. If you read a story about the bullring and then you see that we've done a video about the cheese grater completing, so you watch that, you're on for longer and longer, and it gives us even more time to learn about who you are, and the advertisers like it because you're not coming on for 2 minutes and going away, and going back to sleep hopefully, if it's at 6:30 in the morning, but going on to read more and more things. And we can see how far down the article you read, which as a journalist, I have to say, has brought tears to my eyes. All of those really great outros, I've sweated blood over on the past. About 50% of people read more than half of the way down, and it's like about less than 20% get all the way to the bottom of our carefully crafted words. They just want to sort of like know the main bits, and then they're off to make some money. So those articles that do generate subscriptions, where people say, actually, I'm going to subscribe now because I've read this and I really want it. This is the new grail for journalists, and if you can say my article generated 100 subscriptions, then they'd probably buy you a bottle of wine. So what's next? So in this great information exchange, soon the physical manifestation of the newspaper may not be a printed product. All of the newspapers must be weighing up how much longer there can be, because if we're all reading newspapers on phones and not buying them during the week, I mean, it costs an awful lot of money to print a newspaper. It costs even more money to distribute it and to pick up all the copies that haven't sold and destroy them. It's not environmentally friendly. So at some point down the line, the change is going to happen. But we'll still have, I think, a physical manifestation of our brands in the form of events like this. And certainly all of the big papers are putting a lot of money into developing, well, some of them call it communities, like The Guardian. They have events where you can come in, you can pay about £400 and meet their literary editor, and she'll tell you how to write up your memoirs. It all sounds very nice, and they make a lot of money out of it. The Times has got its club, and increasingly the FT is also getting in on the act. We have our FT 125 club, where chief executives can come in and meet people like Mark Carney. We did an event with him. So there are other ways of selling what we produce. But then to sum up, we're all finding different ways of telling the story as our readers or as our clients find different ways of consuming the news. But there'll still be hacks, and there'll still be flaks, and the value of face-to-face networking in a digital world can only be more highly prized, I think. So thank you again for coming along, and let's start the award.